Company events. No, I don't mean that very horrible company out where they force you to go out on a Tuesday afternoon and you think, I'd like to be home with my friends. However, they force me to go here and for my career. It's so important. I'm not now just joining them and maybe have lunch or maybe a late lunch or a dinner and a drink or two, or in the UK, probably 10. So it's when you have these kind of events in mind, that's not what I'm looking for. That's not what we're talking about. But today we talk about the relevance of company, organizational, whatever organization you work for, events and the relevance, how to direct them, and how to bring them in the right direction, and how to deal with them in a professional way. Because let's be very straightforward here. There are significant issues with events right now. Since COVID-19, many events have been cut. I want to be very straightforward here, and I'm going to no, I don't want to call it devil's advocate. I'm just stating the obvious. I know this is not a popular opinion in my industry. However, many events are gone for a reason. We had too many events that did not lead anywhere. One of these events where you just say, hey, I'm flying somewhere for a day or two. We're going to have a couple of speakers. No one cares about them, right? We're just sitting there and we pretend that we listen to them, but we don't really care, do we? No, we don't. So at the end, there's always a nice evening at the bar. That's why I'm actually here. So we're going to have a nice moment, sleep a bit longer next day. And at the end, I can fly back. So I spent 2 days saying, oh yeah, very important networking. And it didn't get you anywhere. Many people in my industry stopped their business during COVID-19, and without I'm not deliberately offending anyone here. However, there are people whose expertise was so bad that they only made a living by going to events as speakers. And when you hear the term speakers, especially when you have speakers who tell you that you only have a keynote speaker, they do only keynotes, no workshops, no nothing. That means they have the perfectly rehearsed 45 minutes. And when they're not entertainers, but they pretend to talk about a business topic, these people are not experts. These people are something in between professional showman and snake oil tradesman. So people you shouldn't listen to because they know their one keynote and that was it. These people will not get you anywhere. These are talk-only events. Why talk only? They talk and nothing happens afterwards. Nothing in your organization changes in a positive way. And this is why I say these events are gone and they will not be missed. It is perfectly fine that these events are gone. It is perfectly fine that these people left the market. And I know that many people in my industry will not agree with me, especially the ones who had to leave the industry. However, when you look into how do you get your direction, how do you get your organization in the right direction, you certainly do not get it in the right direction by just putting speakers up who no one listens to, absolutely no one. However, we also know it is not possible to run an organization without events. If you do work only, you are not going to sustain. There is no chance that people will stay with your organization if you do work only. So you can do events online, offline, hybrid, both, or all three, maybe even at the same time in different locations. However, how do you deal with them appropriately? And let's talk about the first aspect here. The first decision you have to make, and I always refer to Richard Hackman here. Richard Hackman, a former professor at Harvard University, he distinguishes between 4 different ways of communication and 2 different main ways what you want to communicate. And the first way is called conveyance. Conveyance means you want to bring facts along. You want to bring facts from where you are to the audience. The other term is convergence, which means you want to bring people together. People need to be motivated, closer together, better teams, better motivation within the team, working together more closely, etc., etc. And what Richard Heckman found out here is that he said there are 4 different ways of how to communicate. One is synchronous or asynchronous. That means either synchronous means live meeting. So for example, when we meet and we talk, that's synchronous, or asynchronous, which is, for example, a recording like a podcast that you're listening to right now, or maybe an email because you can answer whenever you like. The other aspect is the difference between lean and rich communication. Lean communication means data only, so numbers, you talk about reports, for example, or business results, and then rich communication, that is the opposite, which means you bring people together. It's often focused on emotions to motivate people to do more than you probably expect them to do just by their contract or their work contract, however they work for you. So as soon as you want to have a conveyance moment, that means you want to convey facts from A to B, you want to bring facts from your side to the other side. What you do is you go asynchronous and lean. What you do not do is you invite people to a live event where someone stands in front of them and says, oh, sorry, the next slide might be a bit hard to read. So that They know it's hard to read, so they just don't care, obviously. Next slide is a PowerPoint sheet. Is a Microsoft Excel sheet that someone just copied on a PowerPoint slide. You can't read anything. And then they talk about numbers for the next 30 minutes. Of course, no consequences, just numbers. Presenting, looking back, that was it. And these kind of events are completely and utterly useless. It's one of these events which often happen online where you say at the end, well, that meeting could have been an email. And you don't want to have these moments. When you want to have a good meeting, it's the moment of convergence where you go synchronous and rich. You focus on the emotion, you focus on bringing people together, and that has to happen when people meet either live in person or live online or any kind of hybrid solution that you can find. But now, of course, you have to look into what is the direction, what is the focus of the event? What is the direction you want to get your organization to? And there are three main aspects that you have to look into when it comes to events. So aspect number one is emotions. Emotions motivate, and there's no question about that. Emotions motivate more than any kind of fact. Even when you tell people that there's a £10,000 or dollar or yen or whatever euro bonus, that will always be temporary. Emotions motivate for a way longer time. I can give you an example. When you go on YouTube, you find a moment where I won some awards in Las Vegas, and I could still remember every single second of that event. Not because I won the award. The award was a moment which was nice, but everything that happened on that convention was perfectly planned and caused a massive motivational moment for me. And it's now more than 10 years ago, and I still remember every single moment of that convention. Even colleagues who were there only have to say, remember Vegas? And they say, oh, yes, we do. And that was the perfect convention. So emotions motivate, emotions bring people together. Also, you can connect facts and emotions on events. And that is the best way how to connect them. If you send people a PDF and say, hey, look, this is my motivational phrase, and this is the next PowerPoint slide with a product we are selling, then I am sorry to tell you that this is not going to get you anywhere. So when you want to bring facts and emotions together, I just give you an example. Let's say you want to digitize your sales team. They all should move from the clipboard or whatever solution you have, Microsoft Excel, to a professional approach with, let's say, the iPad. That's a rather dry topic. And often people say, oh, look, data is dry, IT is dry, tech is dry, maybe you're an engineering company, that's dry. And they say dry, dry, dry. So events are dry, aren't they? And they clearly do not have to be if you have the right people. So, for example, when you now say, we want to have someone on stage who gives us insights, but also practical insights, maybe talks about a couple of projects they've done in the past, but also tells us the pitfalls, what went right, what went wrong. And, well, the best would be if the person's a bit entertaining so we can listen to them easily. And then, for example, I would highly recommend you to hire Thorsten Jekyll. He lives in Germany, in Berlin, one of, in my opinion, if not the leading expert on how to digitize a sales team, digitize, for example, the sales team of Coca-Cola Germany, which is not a small organization, not an organization that is not successful, and also an organization that doesn't have to move because they are in a very comfortable market position. However, there were a couple of moments that happened, and then he came in to digitize that properly. So connecting facts and emotion works perfectly well with the right people on stage if you have people who do not do keynote only or whatever nonsense they claim they do with their rehearsed keynote that today they present with you in front of engineers and tomorrow they present with a noodle company. So you need tailored content. What you want to do is bring knowledge forward that will be applied in the real world, plus an emotion that it sustains. And that masterpiece is not easy to achieve. However, it is possible, as we know. So that is the first thing why we do have events. Create emotions that motivate sustainably. Second aspect is to win talents. And of course, you will now say, well, events are there to retain talents, not to win them. Well, back in the days they were. Today, if you are somewhere where you say, well, talent's a bit scarce, you probably should do like an open house, which is the very, very easiest and very beginner's way how to do an event. However, the worst way to do it, and I saw this way too often, people said there's an open house, so you can just come in and ask questions. And what happened was people came in, then they were led into a meeting room where there were a couple of people sitting with a roll-up in the back, and then you could ask questions and then leave the meeting room and go home. That, of course, does not create any emotion. You need a perfectly planned event. And yes, that costs money, but the return is way, way higher. People want to talk to people who really work with you. And yes, you have to invest money and time, but the return is way higher, at least if you want to sustain in the actual situation of the war for talent that we have right now. And believe me, it's getting worse in a couple of years, because as soon as all baby boomers are retired, believe me, it's going to be more challenging than ever before. The next 5 to 10 years are going to be a bumpy ride, believe me. What you need when you have these events about winning talents, you need a very clear process how to proceed with the hiring. You cannot just have an event and say, well, let's hope that they get back to us, because other companies do exactly the same. They have these events as well. So you need a process. What do you do first, second, third? Because there is a case that is called reciprocity. As soon as your organization takes care of the potential person applying, the potential person applying will most likely take care of you. The more interested you are, the more interested they will be, except when you deliver the really bad event or the people at the event really messed up. So look at your hopefully unambiguously clear process, including active sourcing. How do you want to deal with these people afterwards? Because just hoping that they get back to you is simply not enough. And then the last aspect, how to get events and your organization the right direction, is celebrating successes. And please don't tell me, oh, we're very good at that. We have a Christmas party. Congratulations. If you want to make it worse, and that happened to me in London in the UK, they say they had a very diverse Christmas party. And when people pronounce diverse Christmas party in that way, I always get suspicious because something bad is happening there. So I asked them, what makes your Christmas party so diverse? And they said, well, we have drag DJs. Sometimes I really do not know where to start with organizations. However, your diversity bill will not be fulfilled. But if you have any diversity in interest, it will not be fulfilled by having drag DJs at the Christmas party. So celebrating successes, one party or one festivity a year standard, more likely to. However, team celebrations do not replace the bigger picture. I know it is challenging, and when you are a large organization, you can of course not say we're going to shut down. When you are St. Thomas Hospital in Central London, you can't say, oh, we just shut down St. Thomas Hospital because we have a Christmas party or an end of year party. That's not how it works. However, you need to offer something, even if it's throughout a couple of days, so people can come and go. Offer them something that people can get together across different business unit divisions, however you want to call it, because otherwise you only strengthen their idea. They live in a silo, they work in a silo, and they only take care of their silo. And that then is your fault. And by the way, please don't take COVID-19 as an excuse. Yes, we had COVID. Yes, we had the pandemic. And no, it is not an excuse anymore that you can use it not to have the festivity. People realize very quickly, by the way, when you do pseudo events. I give you an example for a pseudo event. Companies say, oh, we have an amazing summer's party. Oh, by the way, Saturday from 2 p.m. So everyone please come in on your day off to have that celebration with us. And of course, they didn't. Of course, you can now say, hey, I know this one company where there is a big exception. They all love to come. And most likely these are owner-led companies where people have very strong emotions and very strong emotional connectivity to the owners or the owning family. However, it is not the rule. Please do not make the exception the rule. People realize very quickly if you pseudo invest in the events. When you say, hey, we invest the money, but you give us the time, which basically already balances the books immediately. You either properly invest or you don't invest at all. And by the way, if you don't invest at all, don't complain that the talent outlook for your organization might be, let's say, challenging, to put it into very, very polite words. And when you have an event where you want to celebrate successes, keep the speeches short. Do not give the microphone to any manager who wants to say something where they say, oh, just 5 minutes and it takes 25, and that happens 7 times per night. No one wants to hear them talking. If you have to say something say something for 2.5 minutes, wish them a great night, and then just take it from there. People want to celebrate success by celebrating successes, not by listening to you talking about yourself and how amazing you are. Put your ego back. Thank you. The event culture you have, to wrap this up, the event culture you have massively influences the attractivity of the employer, massively influences your attractivity as an organization that hires people, that wants to get talent into the organization, win them, retain them, develop them, whatever you want to plan or do with them. And the event culture is part of that. So you better be proactive about this. And I wish you all the best doing so. And of course, I published about this. And if you now say, well, I have a couple of questions before I read something, feel free to contact me. nb@nb-networks.com. Just send me an email and then we take it from there. If you say we have something very specific, we need, I don't know, a training session, a speaker, a coach for our people, happy to talk about that as well. But we can also just talk about your questions, your remarks, whatever you want to talk about this topic or anything else, which is in the area of sustainable leadership for an organization. nb@nb-networks.com. Special thanks to the people who contacted me during the last week. We had very productive chats about the topic of the week before. And of course, we can either talk via the phone or via email, via Zoom, all different options on the table. Very productive, sometimes very controversial. So we didn't always agree, but thank you very much for keeping it respectful and having the exchange with me. That really drives this podcast. And thank you very much for being constantly listening. I'll get back to that in a minute. The second aspect I always recommend is that you register for the so-called leadership letter when you go to expert.nb-networks.com. Then you can sign up there. And what you get is every Wednesday morning, there's just one email, 100% content at free guarantee. And that email gives you free access at no charge with everything I published. So feel free to use that at any point in time given. But the third aspect is the most important one. And before I say goodbye for this week, I have to say thank you again. 70,000 people are now. We just crossed the line recently. We're now more than 70,000 people who listened or are listening to this podcast. We have amazing international rankings. This went way, way, way beyond anything I could have ever expected. I can only say thank you very much, and I hope that we will have many, many years to come. I wish you all the best, and have a great week. If you now think about having better events, please do so. If you have anything you'd like to talk about, contact me anytime. I'm always happy to help. And for the rest of the week, there's only one thing I have left for you today at this podcast. The last thing I always have to say is the same thing I say every week. So at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.